Listen, I need to tell you about the day I watched a human completely dismantle everything we thought we knew about hierarchy, dignity, and the proper way to conduct military operations. My name is Vorthan Kal, and I served under Commander Thrix aboard the stellar enforcement vessel Dominance. Notice the past tense there. Yeah, that is entirely because of what happened with Lieutenant Maya Reeves. The thing about humans is that nobody takes them seriously at first. They are short, right? Fragile looking. They have got these weird little fingers instead of proper combat appendages, and their skin tears if you look at it wrong. When the Galactic Union first encountered them, the consensus was pretty clear. Cute, kind of scrappy, probably good for manual labor or entertainment purposes. Military service? Absolutely not. But Earth had this annoying habit of producing documentation. Treaties. Legal precedents. And unfortunately for everyone who preferred the old way of doing things, the Union Charter clearly stated that any species achieving faster than light travel earned the right to full citizenship, including military enrollment. So here comes Maya Reeves, assigned to our vessel as part of some diplomatic exchange program that nobody wanted but everyone had to pretend to respect. She showed up in a standard-issue Union uniform that had clearly been modified to fit her bizarre human proportions, carrying a duffel bag that probably weighed more than she did, with this expression on her face that I can only describe as aggressively cheerful. Commander Thrix took one look at her and did that thing where his throat sac inflated slightly. If you know Vraxian body language, you know that means he was approximately 3 seconds away from saying something incredibly insulting. But protocol is protocol, so instead he assigned her to navigation support under Cadet First Class Reckon Voss. Now, Reckon. Oh boy. Where do I start with Reckon? Reckon Voss was what we call in the service a legacy admission. His progenitor served with distinction, his progenitor's progenitor commanded an entire battle fleet, and Reckon himself had all the natural talent of a decorative rock. But he had connections, commendations that his family bought, and an ego that could have its own gravitational field. He stood about 7 feet tall, had these impressive cranial ridges that he spent way too much time polishing, and he made absolutely certain that everyone knew he graduated top of his class at the academy. Which, sure, sounds impressive until you learn that his family endowed 3 buildings there. So Reckon takes one look at Maya, this human who barely reaches his mid-torso, and you can actually see the wheels turning in his head. Here is an opportunity, right? Someone he can push around, someone he can blame when things go wrong, someone who will make him look competent by comparison. His first words to her were, and I quote, "Try not to break anything, primate. The equipment is worth more than your entire planet's gross domestic product." Maya smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that should have immediately sent every survival instinct in Reckon's body into red alert mode. I will keep that in mind, sir. Thank you for the warm welcome. The first week was almost painful to watch. Reckon assigned Maya every terrible job on the navigation deck. Recalibrating sensors, which involves sticking your hands into spaces filled with electromagnetic discharge that makes your nervous system feel like it is being used as a percussion instrument. Cleaning the coolant filters, which smells like decomposing sulfur and regret. Organizing the star charts, which is a task we usually give to the automated systems because it is mind-numbingly tedious and completely pointless. Maya did all of it without complaint. Well, without verbal complaint. Her facial expressions told a different story, but she kept her mouth shut and her work immaculate. I started paying attention during the second week, when she began asking questions. Not the normal questions that new crew members ask, like, where is the waste reclamation facility, or, how do I adjust the atmospheric settings in my quarters? No, Maya asked things like, why do we run threat assessments every 6 hours instead of continuously, and, has anyone ever tested whether the shield harmonics are optimized for our current patrol route, and, who decided that navigation protocols should require 3 redundant confirmations for every course adjustment, and have they considered the response time penalty during combat situations? Reckon, because he is fundamentally an idiot, thought these questions meant she was stupid. We do things this way because this is how they are done, human. Perhaps your primitive brain cannot comprehend the sophistication of Union military doctrine. But here is the thing about Maya's questions. They were not stupid. They were dangerous. Because once she asked them, you could not help but think about the answers, and once you thought about the answers, you started realizing that maybe, just maybe, a lot of what we did was based on tradition rather than logic. The incident happened 3 weeks into her assignment. We were running a standard patrol along the Kepler Divide, which is this region of space that technically belongs to the Union but practically belongs to whoever feels like being there on any given day. Pirates, smugglers, the occasional territorial dispute. Nothing we could not handle, but enough activity to keep things interesting. Maya was at her station, monitoring long-range sensors while Reckon stood nearby, doing what he did best, which was looking important while contributing nothing. I was at tactical, Commander Thrix had the bridge, and everything was running smoothly until it was not. The sensor array started screaming. Not literally, obviously, but the alert system we use sounds disturbingly organic, and when 6 proximity warnings go off simultaneously, it sounds like something is dying in agony. Which, coincidentally, was what was about to happen to us if we did not figure out what was going on. Report. Commander Thrix's voice cut through the chaos with that particular tone that means someone is about to have a very bad day. Reckon stared at his display like it had personally betrayed him. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. The cranial ridges that he was so proud of flushed a pale blue, which for Vraxians means panic. The sensors are malfunctioning, Commander. Multiple false contacts. I will need to run diagnostics. We do not have time for diagnostics, Cadet. What am I looking at? Maya, who was technically not supposed to speak unless directly addressed because Reckon had made that abundantly clear, said quietly, permission to speak, sir. Denied. Reckon snapped, his voice cracking slightly. I am handling this. He was absolutely not handling this. The proximity alerts intensified. Whatever was out there was getting closer, and Reckon was frantically cycling through diagnostic subroutines like that was going to solve anything. Commander Thrix's throat sac was now fully inflated, which meant we had progressed from, someone is about to have a bad day, to, someone might get ejected from an airlock. Maya stood up. Just stood up from her station, walked directly to Reckon's command console, and said, move. How dare you? I will have you brought up on insubordination charges. I will. There are 7 stealth mines in a hexagonal deployment pattern around our position, configured to detonate simultaneously when we hit the center point, which at current speed will be in approximately 90 seconds. The sensor array is not malfunctioning. It is being jammed by a short-range dampening field, which is why your diagnostics are not showing anything useful. Now move, or we all die, and you can file your complaints with whatever deity Vraxians believe in. The bridge went absolutely silent. Even the alarm system seemed to pause out of sheer shock. Commander Thrix stared at Maya. Reckon stared at Maya. I stared at Maya, and I was already running combat scenarios in my head because if she was wrong about this, her career was over, and if she was right, well, things were about to get interesting. How do you know this? Commander Thrix asked, and his voice had lost all of its anger, replaced by something that might have been respect or might have been fear. With Vraxians, those two emotions sound pretty similar. Because I spent the last 3 weeks recalibrating sensors and studying every pirate tactic in the Union database instead of sleeping, sir. Also, I recognize the signature. This is a Kalvax Raiders special. They used the same setup at the Battle of Proxima Station 7 years ago. It is in the historical records that apparently nobody reads anymore. Reckon finally found his voice. You are guessing. You cannot possibly. 80 seconds, sir, Maya interrupted, her eyes still on the display. If I am wrong, you can court-martial me. If I am right, you can thank me later. Or now. Now would actually be better because we need to alter course immediately. Commander Thrix did not hesitate. Helm, execute evasive pattern Theta 9 on Lieutenant Reeves's mark. I am a support technician, sir, not a lieutenant, Maya said, her fingers already flying across Reckon's console, which she had completely commandeered. And mark. Hard starboard, full thrust, 30-degree declination, hold for 5 seconds then rotate ventral axis 90 degrees. The ship lurched. If you have never experienced emergency combat maneuvers on a stellar enforcement vessel, imagine being inside a container while a giant shakes it violently and also punches you in the stomach. It is deeply unpleasant. We came about hard, the inertial dampeners screaming in protest, and for a moment I thought maybe Maya had been wrong, maybe we had just executed the most embarrassing tactical maneuver in Union history based on the paranoid delusions of a human technician. Then space behind us lit up like someone had detonated a small star. 7 mines, exactly as Maya had said, all detonating in a cascading pattern that would have vaporized us if we had been there when they went off. The blast wave caught our stern shields and sent us tumbling, but we were alive, and alive meant winning. Target the dampening field generator. Commander Thrix roared, and now his voice had that edge that meant someone else was about to have a worse day than us. I want to know who thought they could ambush a Union vessel in patrolled space. Maya was still at Recon Station, her hands steady despite the fact that we were currently spinning through space like a drunken meteor. Generator located, sir. Transmitting coordinates to tactical. Also, there is a frigate decloaking at bearing 273 Mark 8. Calvax configuration, armed with plasma torpedoes and what looks like a really bad attitude. I pulled up the targeting solution, locked on, and sent a spread of kinetic penetrators toward the frigate before they could get their weapons online. The first 3 missed. The 4th and 5th hit their forward shields. The 6th punched through and took out their starboard engine cluster. The Calvax frigate immediately began broadcasting surrender protocols, which was anticlimactic but preferable to extended combat. Commander Thrix sat back in his command chair, his throat sac slowly deflating to normal size. He looked at Maya, then at Recon, then back at Maya. Cadet Voss, he said quietly, you are relieved of navigation duties, effective immediately. Report to my ready room in 1 hour to discuss your future aboard this vessel. Recon's face went through several interesting color changes. But sir, 1 hour, Cadet. Then Commander Thrix turned to Maya. As for you, Technician Reeves. You will assume temporary command of the navigation station until I decide what to do with you. Dismissed. So here is where things get really interesting, because if you think the story ends with Maya being a hero and everyone learning a valuable lesson about respecting humans, you do not know anything about military bureaucracy or the incredibly fragile egos of entitled cadets. Recon spent exactly 45 minutes in Commander Thrix's ready room. I know this because I was standing right outside, pretending to review maintenance schedules while actually listening to every word that came through the door, which was poorly soundproofed because the Dominance was built during a budget crisis and corners were cut. What I heard was a lot of Recon explaining how the incident was actually a misunderstanding, how he had been about to implement the exact same solution that Maya suggested, how his family's contributions to the Union Defense Force entitled him to a certain degree of consideration, and how removing him from his position would reflect poorly on Commander Thrix's judgment in personnel management. You know, standard privileged nonsense. When Recon emerged, his cranial ridges were back to their normal color and he had this smile that made me want to check if my sidearm was properly secured. He walked past me without acknowledgement, which was fine, because the feeling was mutual. Commander Thrix called me in next. His ready room was exactly what you would expect for a Vraxian commander. Minimalist, cold, with several traditional weapons mounted on the walls that had probably never been used for anything except intimidation. Vorthen, he said, and I noticed he used my personal name instead of my rank, which meant this was going to be one of those conversations. What is your assessment of the human? I considered lying, then decided against it. Commander Thrix had this annoying ability to detect dishonesty, probably because he practiced it so much himself. She is competent, sir. Possibly the most competent junior officer we have on navigation. Definitely more competent than Reckon. That is not what I asked. Sir, with respect, that is exactly what you asked. His throat sac inflated slightly, then relaxed. Almost a laugh, if Vraxians did that sort of thing. Fine. Let me rephrase. Is she dangerous? That was a better question. To who, sir? To the established order of things. And there it was. The real issue. Not whether Maya was good at her job, but whether her being good at her job was going to make everyone else look bad by comparison. Which, yes, it absolutely would. She is going to cause problems, sir, I said carefully. But probably not the kind you are worried about. He dismissed me without further comment, which I took as permission to leave before I said something career-limiting. Over the next week, Maya ran the navigation station like she had been born to it. Course corrections that normally took 3 officers and 15 minutes, she did solo in under 2. Her threat assessments were so accurate that Tactical started requesting her input before running combat drills. Even the helm officer, a cranky Drillaxian named Mort who hated everyone equally, admitted that flying was easier with Maya calling coordinates. And Reckon? Reckon watched all of this with the expression of someone who had just realized that his entire life was built on a foundation of privilege that was rapidly crumbling. He started showing up to the navigation deck during off hours, reviewing Maya's work, looking for mistakes. He filed 3 formal complaints about minor protocol violations, all of which were technically correct but practically meaningless. He even tried to pull rank during a staff meeting, insisting that as a cadet first class, his authority superseded that of a mere technician. Commander Thrix shut that down immediately. Rank is earned through competence, Cadet Voss. If you would like to demonstrate yours, I suggest you focus on your new assignment in cargo management. Cargo management. The job we give to people we want to quietly humiliate without actually firing them. I almost felt bad for Reckon. Almost. The confrontation happened during the 4th week, in the observation lounge after Gamma shift. I was there because I could not sleep, which happens sometimes when your ship nearly gets vaporized by space mines. Maya was there because she apparently never slept, which was concerning but also explained a lot about her work ethic. Reckon showed up, and the moment I saw his face, I knew someone was about to do something stupid. You, he said, pointing at Maya with one of his long fingers. You think you are clever, do you not? Coming onto my ship, taking my position, making me look incompetent. Maya did not even turn around. She was staring out the viewport at the stars, holding a cup of something that smelled like burned vegetation, which I later learned was called coffee and was apparently a human stimulant. Your ship. Pretty sure the Union owns this vessel, Reckon. Also, I did not make you look incompetent. You did that entirely on your own. His cranial ridges flushed dark purple. Anger, or possibly rage. The distinction is subtle. I have connections. My family has served the Union for 6 generations. You are nothing. A biological accident from a backwater planet that only joined the Union because you stumbled onto technology you barely understand. Cool speech, Maya said, taking a sip of her coffee. Did you rehearse that, or was it improvised? Because if you improvised it, I am actually kind of impressed. The part about biological accidents was particularly creative. You dare mock me? I mean, yeah. You are making it pretty easy. I should have intervened. As the senior officer present, it was my responsibility to de-escalate the situation. But here is the thing about watching someone like Reckon get verbally dismantled by someone a third his size. It was just too entertaining to interrupt. Reckon stepped closer, using his height to try to intimidate her. Classic move. Completely ineffective against someone who had spent the last month being condescended to and had apparently decided she was done tolerating it. You want to know what your real problem is, Reckon? Maya turned to face him, and even though she had to crane her neck to make eye contact, somehow she was the one looking down on him. Your problem is not that I am here. Your problem is that I am better at your job than you ever were, and everybody knows it, and now you have to face the possibility that maybe, just maybe, your entire career has been a participation trophy funded by your family's money. How dare you? I graduated top of my class. Because your family bought the class. Everyone knows it. The instructors know it, the other cadets know it, and deep down, you know it too. That is why you are so angry. Not because I took your position. Because I proved that your position was never really yours to begin with. Reckon's hand went to his sidearm. Not drawing it, just resting on it, which was technically not a threatening gesture but absolutely was one. Prove yourself, he hissed. You want respect. You want recognition. Then prove you deserve it. Challenge protocols. Single combat. You and me. When I win, you request transfer off this vessel and admit that humans do not belong in Union military service. I stood up then, because this had gone from entertaining to potentially lethal. Reckon, stand down. That is an order. He ignored me, keeping his eyes locked on Maya. Well? Or are you too scared to back up all that talk? Maya smiled again. That same smile from her first day, the one that should have warned everyone that something terrible was about to happen. Sure. Why not? When do you want to do this? Now. Combat Deck 3. Standard rules. First to yield or incapacitation. Sounds great. Just one condition. You are in no position to make conditions, human. When I win, and notice I said when, not if, I get your uniform and your rank. Full cadet first-class privileges, full authority, full recognition. You become what I am now. A support technician. Deal. The observation lounge went silent. Challenge protocols were one thing. Wagering rank was something else entirely. It was allowed under Union regulations, technically, but it almost never happened because the social consequences were devastating for whoever lost. Reckon's face went through several color changes before settling on a deep red. Confidence, or possibly stupidity. Again, the distinction is subtle. Deal. When I defeat you, everyone will see what humans really are. Weak. Pathetic. Unsuited for military service. Great. Love the confidence. Really selling it. Let's go. I followed them to Combat Deck 3, along with about 15 other crew members who had somehow heard about the challenge within approximately 30 seconds. Military vessels are worse than high school for gossip distribution. The combat deck was a standard training facility. Padded floors, weapon racks along the walls, observation gallery above for senior officers to watch without risking injury. Commander Thrix was already there, which meant someone had woken him up, which meant he was probably in a terrible mood. Is this really happening? He asked me as I entered the gallery. Apparently, sir. And you did not stop it because? Because I wanted to see what would happen, sir. His throat sac inflated, then deflated in what might have been a sigh. Honestly? Same. Down on the deck, Reckon was stretching, flexing his arms, showing off his reach advantage and his muscle mass. He had at least 80 pounds on Maya and was significantly taller. In any reasonable assessment of physical combat capability, he should have won easily. Maya just stood there, rolling her shoulders, looking relaxed. Too relaxed. The referee, a Dralaxian security officer named Kess, went through the standard protocols. This is a sanctioned challenge combat under Union regulations. Standard rules apply. No lethal force. No permanent injury. Fight continues until one participant yields or is rendered unable to continue. Participants, acknowledge. Acknowledged, Reckon said. Acknowledged, Maya said. Begin. Reckon charged immediately, which was his first mistake. He came in high, trying to use his reach and strength to grapple Maya into submission. Standard Vraxian combat doctrine. Overwhelming force applied quickly. Maya stepped aside, let him go past, and kicked the back of his knee as he went by. Reckon stumbled, caught himself, turned around looking confused. Lucky dodge. Sure, Maya said. Let us go with that. He came in again, more carefully this time, trying to corner her against the wall. Maya let him think it was working, waited until he committed to a grab, then dropped low, swept his legs, and used his own momentum to send him crashing into the wall he was trying to pin her against. The impact was loud enough that I winced. Reckon got up slowly, his cranial ridges now flushed with embarrassment as much as anger. Stop running and fight me properly. I am fighting you properly. You are just losing properly. The third exchange was faster. Reckon tried a combination attack, using his superior reach to throw strikes while advancing. Some of them connected. Maya took a hit to the shoulder that should have staggered her, another to the ribs that definitely hurt, but she kept moving, staying just outside his optimal range, making him overextend. Then she moved in close, too close for him to effectively strike, got inside his guard, and did something with her elbow that I did not fully see but that made a sound like a vegetable being snapped in half. Reckon screamed. His arm hung at an angle that arms should not hang at. Yield, Maya said quietly. Never. He tried to strike with his other arm, but the pain was clearly affecting his coordination. Maya caught the strike, redirected it, used his own force against him again, and put him face down on the mat with his functioning arm locked behind his back. Yield. I will not. She applied pressure. Not enough to break anything, but enough that Reckon's voice went up several octaves. Yield. Winner, Technician Reeves, Kess announced, sounding like she was trying very hard not to laugh. Maya released Reckon and stood up. She was breathing hard, had a bruise forming on her shoulder, and was definitely going to be sore in the morning, but she was standing. Reckon was not. Medical team to combat Deck 3, Commander Thrix said into his comm unit. Then he looked at me. Well. That happened. Yes, sir. I am going to have so much paperwork. Yes, sir. Down on the deck, Maya walked over to where Reckon was still lying, trying to process what had just happened. She knelt down next to him, spoke quietly enough that I could not hear from the gallery, then stood up and walked out. Later, after medical had taken care of Reckon's arm and his ego, after Commander Thrix had filed the necessary reports, after the entire crew had gossiped about the fight for approximately 6 hours straight, I found Maya in the observation lounge again, still drinking that terrible coffee. So, I said, sitting down across from her. Cadet First Class Reeves now, I suppose. She shrugged. Apparently. Still getting used to it. What did you say to him? At the end? I told him that respect is not something you inherit or buy. You earn it. And that maybe losing was the best thing that ever happened to him, because now he has the opportunity to actually become competent instead of just pretending to be. Think he will listen? Probably not. But I gave him the chance. I looked at her for a moment, this small human who had just completely upended our ship's hierarchy through sheer competence and stubbornness. You know you are going to cause more problems, right? For yourself and everyone else. Maya smiled. Not the dangerous smile this time. Something more genuine. Yeah. I know. But someone has to prove that humans belong here. Might as well be me. And that is how Lieutenant Maya Reeves, who was technically still just Cadet First Class Maya Reeves at that point, became the first human to hold command rank on a Union vessel through challenge combat. It set a precedent that the Union is still trying to figure out how to handle. Last I heard, she made captain 3 years later. Reckon ended up requesting transfer to administrative services, where his family connections could still help him but where his incompetence was less likely to get anyone killed. As for me, I am still serving under Commander Thrix, still watching humans prove themselves in ways that make the rest of us very uncomfortable, and still trying to figure out if their arrival in the Union was the best thing or the worst thing that ever happened to us. Probably both, honestly. But one thing is certain. Nobody calls them primates anymore. At least not twice.